Hello, welcome to the Why Was She podcast. This week we're talking Chelsea. What do they need to do to improve from their slightly disappointing outing last season? What do we make of their transfer business so far? And what are our realistic expectations for them for next season? Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Why Was She podcast. I'm Charlie Parks and I'm here with Matt Clough. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thank you. I'm not bad.
Ready for a new season?
Yeah, I'm starting to miss football a little bit now. We've got WAFCON's going on. We had Men's League Cup at the weekend, which we watched a bit of, which sort of whetted the appetite. And now I'm fully ready for another season of the WSL.
Sheffield Wednesday versus Bolton really whetted the appetite for you, did it?
Yeah, maybe that's a slight exaggeration. Maybe it sort of increased my appetite for
proper football.
For proper football.
Yeah, I mean, I fell asleep, and I'm a Bolton fan. I literally fell asleep and then woke up in time to watch one of our players get sent off for punching the Sheffield Wednesday players. So yeah, that's the tone of the season set there. Let's get back to the proper football.
Yeah, so in case you've not seen, we release an episode now every Tuesday. So we're recording this on Monday night and we're releasing every Tuesday. So we're doing our usual mixture of deep dives, whatever the hell we want to talk about, opinion on the state of the game or the wider sort of context of women's football, internationals, WSL, Champions League, alternative 11s, transfers, whatever, you know the sort of stuff that we talk about. But it's going to be happening every Tuesday unless we're on holiday, which we will forewarn you of. We don't have a whole team. It's just me and Matt, so we don't have anyone to record in our absence. So, yeah, every Tuesday, asterisks, unless we're on holiday.
Yes.
This week's episode, which I will intro in a minute, was suggested by you. So you might think, if you come into this, like, this is a weird place to start and your kind of quote-unquote new season. But I've been threatening to do this episode for a while. I thought it was fairly timely in terms of like the transfer window, pre-season starting. So we're going to talk about it. So no pressure, but this was all your idea, Matt.
Yep.
And if it's shit, then it's your fault.
Buckle in, listeners.
Right. Without further ado then. Last season was a slightly disappointing one for Chelsea. Despite a League Cup win, there was no FA Cup final, no Champions League semi-final, no league title, and they finished third behind fierce rivals Arsenal, meaning they'll have to go the hard route to Champions League qualification this term. After Sonia Bonpastor led them unbeaten to a 7th consecutive league title, it felt like a significant reality check. Reports of unrest in the dressing room and tension between senior players and the coaching staff seem to have played out on the pitch. But how significant was the wobble? Was last season a blip, or are we witnessing the beginning of the end of the period of Chelsea dominance in the WSL and the wider English or European game, I guess? So, yeah, potentially a slightly dramatic
I like it.
intro.
I'm impressed.
Because I think where I'm going to kick off is a reflection on last season and what were their main issues, but also what were their strengths. And when I sort of looked back at the numbers and various bits, I was like, actually, I'm not going to be as negative as I thought I was going to be. Like, at the end of the day, for a team like Chelsea finishing third place, it's not a catastrophic result, is it?
It's not, they are still in the Champions League, although they have to play a qualifying round. It's not like they've completely dropped off a cliff.
One of the most noticeable things, if you look at the pure numbers, is the number of goals that they scored, which was significantly less than the previous two seasons, really. So the 23-24 season, they scored 71. 24-25, they scored 56. And last season, they scored 44.
Yeah.
So there was a real drop-off there. They were the only team in the top 5 who underperformed on their XG. And their conversion was the third worst in the league.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I think that was a very clear problem, was the lack of goals being scored. Defensively, they didn't concede a crazy amount of goals. So 20 versus 13 last season, which is a bit of an uplift, but they were unbeaten last season.
Yeah.
So, and then in the 23-24 season, they conceded 18, but they still won the league. So that's not a massive area of concern in isolation, I think, but their errors leading to shot did go up quite a lot. So 23-24, there was 4 errors. 24-25, there was 10, and 25-26, there was 14. And when I was watching some of the highlights back, I know it's it's difficult to get the full picture from highlights, but I obviously was there at the time watching some of the games live. I think they were quite transitionally vulnerable. I think that was probably one of the things, like they weren't effective enough in the opposition's box, and then they were just being hit on the transition because they couldn't retain possession. Maybe taking a few more risks because they weren't able to kind of get the ball into dangerous positions, and thus the ball was coming back with interest. Yeah, and then I think something that was, I think, anecdotally noted by people, certainly in isolation, about Kira Walsh, who is not someone who's known for scoring goals or even attempting shots on goal, was perhaps being encouraged to shoot more. And I think there was, again, sorry to reel off a load of numbers again, but the 23-24 season, there was 330 attempts from inside the box and 97 from outside the box. And then 24-25, 315 versus 108. And
so
then
almost exactly the same.
And then last season, 269 versus 123. So there was a bit more of an uplift in terms of players just trying to wang one in from outside the area.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that so far? Because I've got more to say, but I don't want to just talk and talk and talk at you.
Yeah, no, I think that's, you know, it's nice when the stats kind of conform to the eye test, because, yeah, you know, the table speaks for itself. But I think, like you say, none of that surprises me in what we saw from Chelsea last year. I think this is probably beyond our kind of stat gathering capabilities, unfortunately, with WSL stat providers being what they are. But I'd be really interested to see what the kind of record, that particularly like their conversion rate and stuff, what that was like before and after Sam Kerr came back, because it did feel like when Kerr came back in, to me, you know, she's a fascinating player, because obviously she does score some great goals, but a lot of her goals are kind of quite scruffy, just like she's just there, she's tapping in rebounds, she's just on the spot. But it's funny, you look at that Chelsea team without Kerr in there when they had, say, Aggie Beaver-Jones, and they just look nowhere near that kind of... You wouldn't even necessarily they were potent with Kerr in the team, but the numbers speak for themselves. You know, she scored 7 goals. She was their joint top goal scorer, and she only played, like half a season?
Yeah, exactly.
And
well, no, yeah, look, I've got... She played 35% of squad minutes, but she was their joint top goal scorer.
Yeah.
And somebody else, like, who I completely forgot was there last season.
Ramirez?
Macario.
Oh, sorry.
They used Macario a lot at the start of the season when Kerr still wasn't quite available or wasn't quite fit. But one of the things that I'd noted down was, just to jump around a little bit, was Kerr's kind of lack of game time was a bit of a head scratcher, because I think at first we all assumed that she wasn't quite ready yet. She wasn't quite back. She was obviously out for a long time, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
But we were like, okay, well, is she not ready to play? And then she went away to the Asian Cup and played like basically however many full 90s. Five full 90s.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that literally, but quite a lot of game time anyway. And then it was like, okay, well, why? And then she looked like the sort of inevitable Sam Kerr that you would expect. And it was like, okay, well, why was she not playing for Chelsea more? You know, she made the 5th most appearances as a sub, I think, in the league, if I've written that down correctly. And she was on the bench for 14 of 22 games.
Yeah, so it's not like she was completely out.
She only
running.
started 5. And I think that was like, the numbers speak for themselves. Like I say, 35% of squad minutes, and she was a joint top goal scorer.
Yeah.
It feels like they could have used her a bit more in terms of, if nothing else, just she will generate chances.
Yeah, it was
like she's that kind of striker, like Bunny Shaw or Alessia Russo or Stina Baxenius. They will generate chances. Not everyone goes in, but they will generate enough chances, and they're good enough that you've almost
the
got
accumulation, the numbers.
You've got a sense of inevitability.
Yeah,
and that was another thing. Like that was a sort of thing that I felt that they were just more sort of vibes based. They were missing that sort of air of inevitability that they've always had.
Yeah,
and I don't know whether it was because it felt like they didn't have that sort of goal scorer, and obviously you don't want to rely on somebody like. We were talking the other day, I think, off mic about Villa and how Kirsty Hansen scored 13 goals for them this season. The next top goal scorer was Rachel Daly with 3. Now they've lost Kirsty Hansen. It's like, okay, where are the goals coming from next season? You don't want to be in that position because obviously you can't rely on one person. But equally, I think you do need that person who, player or players, I guess, from Chelsea who you can kind of look to. And I do think they have those players. Like, so I think Thompson was a big one. I think I don't want to use the word over-reliance because I think she was really good and she was probably their best player last season, other than Lauren James maybe. But I think sometimes it was kind of a bit predictable, like in terms of using her as an outlet. It was like, okay, they're going to use her pace. She's not just quick, she's obviously very skilled in many other areas, but they're going to use her pace as an outlet and she's going to cut in and shoot. That seemed to be a lot of the dimension. And again, anecdotally, it felt to me every time I watched them, there was a lack of consistency and a lack of cohesion, which I think you can get away with against the quote unquote smaller teams. But once you've come up against the bigger teams, that's where you'll suffer for not being organised and not being out of possession and not being clinical, essentially. Yeah. And I think, again, looking at the numbers and how the season played out, I think we can talk about, we've spoken in the past about how Arsenal have fallen down because they've performed really well against the top teams, but then they've thrown away silly points against teams lower down the table. Chelsea, famously last season, Everton ended their unbeaten run in the WSL, but I rewatched the highlights from that game and I just think it was one of them. It was just a really, 2 words, Courtney Brosnan.
Yeah.
And Chelsea hit the post and hit the bar. So I think it was just one of those days. But I think where Chelsea's season, in terms of the league, was lost was in their games against the other top 4 teams. So if we look at last season, they took 8 points from their top 4 rivals, whereas in their unbeaten season, they took all 18 points from them.
Yeah, it's a massive difference,
So it's a massive, massive difference. And that's correct, isn't it? 18 points, yes.
Yeah, and it's not even just Chelsea losing those points, it's them being gained by their direct rivals
but then
as well.
More than that, in terms of like a microcosm, I think it was more of that in terms of a microcosm, I guess. It was those back-to-back losses against Arsenal and City, where they lost 2-0 to Arsenal at Stamford Bridge, and then they completely capitulated against City at the Etihad.
Yeah, 5-1.
I think in both of those games, they just looked completely disorganised. I think in the case against Arsenal, as we know, are just a very good, we know they're a good attacking team, so are City, but looking at how they performed against City, the main problem with them was again and again and again in the transition. They just kept killing them in the transition.
Yeah.
They were too much. But Arsenal, it was more like you sort of classic, if you think like free-flowing Arsenal move where it pings between about 6 players.
Yeah.
And it was just, like not closing players down. It's just details. It's a lack of cohesion and communication in the squad, which, with players of that quality, you can maybe get away with against a team with less attacking quality. But against City or Arsenal, or even United, who they drew with earlier in the season, like, you're just not going to be able to get away with that because they will punish you.
Yeah.
Or in the other end as well, if you're not quite firing to your best capability at the other end of the pitch in terms of getting chances and taking your chances, then those better teams will defend better against you and you won't be able to get more chances, or, unless it's like a over 0.3 XG shot, it's not going in.
Yeah.
So I think, like I say, when I was looking back over it, I don't think in my head, when we spoke about doing this episode, I was like, okay, there's a systemic problem, that it's this. But I just think, for whatever reason, it came down to those games against the other top 4 teams.
Yeah.
Particularly against City and Arsenal, where they...
That two game run.
I don't think... I mean, that game against City was the second time in the WSL that they've conceded 5 goals.
Yeah.
And they hadn't conceded 5 goals in the WSL since 2018-19 against Arsenal.
Yeah.
So it's not a sight we're used to seeing is Chelsea conceding that many goals.
No.
Or just being that open, really.
It had I think that had a feel like a changing of a guard moment. That was City saying, this title's ours. I mean, I think I'm right in saying Millie Bright, that was her penultimate game for Chelsea as well. I think she only played 1 game after that, and obviously there were injuries involved there, but for a player, you don't want to read too much into it, and I'm not saying it was all Bright's fault, but she got bullied in that match, and I've heard sort of, I think it's Gary Neville who's quite famously said, he played 1 game I think it was like against West Brom or something like that, and just he just walks off the pitch knowing I'm done. That's it. The game, leave the game before the game leaves you. And he's like, yeah, the game had truly left me. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened with Millie, and she did play one more game after that, but yeah, it felt, with the benefit of hindsight and knowing she's subsequently retired, it does feel like a bit of that was, that's a nice bookend on the Hayes featuring a little bit of Bon Pastor era.
That's a decent observation, yeah, and I think they just seem to really struggle with Caroline like all the time, but
could not live with her.
Yeah, so
they don't have to deal with her this season anyway.
Not in the WSL.
That's true.
But if they come up against Barcelona, their old foes, Barcelona in the Champions League, they might have to deal with her again. But yeah, I think that we could get into details of losing Carpenter and Kerr when they went to the Asian Cup, and then I can't remember if they had any other players go to the Asian Cup. I don't think they did, because obviously they sent Hermano on loan to Spurs.
Yeah.
And then they did have injuries and stuff like that. And I think there was a lot of shuffling around in the back line. I think another thing was just kind of shoehorning kind of Lucy Bronze in at centre back, which she does a job, but she's not a centre back. She's trying to play her at wing back. She's not a wing back. And it's that's a problem. But this is all fixable stuff in the transfer market, isn't it? And if you get a good run without injuries and etc. And, as I say, I think, but there was all those reports, wasn't there, that I alluded to I said all those reports. There was a report in The Athletic about the sort of the dynamic in the dressing room.
Yeah.
And, was there a bit of tension between the players and the staff?
Yeah,
and I don't want to speculate, and I know we're going to talk about their transfer business in a minute, but it sounded very much to me like that was very much and especially with when Paul Green left, I think players like Millie Bright and I think Sam Kerr were quite vocal, I think, in their disappointment around that decision. And like I say, I'm not trying to start a conspiracy here, but if you look at the list of players that have departed this season, I feel like there was an element of they needed to refresh anyway. A little bit like we've spoken about Arsenal, just needing a little bit of a refresh. So you've got Wrighton, Kerr, Wrighton Cannerid probably doesn't fall into that, but Bright retiring and Charles, just that kind of Wrighton, Kerr and Bright have been there a long time. And they were very much they were very Emma Hayes players.
Emma Hayes legacy.
And I say, I'm not saying they've been bulleted because one of them's retired and Sam Kerr's contracts ran out. But do you know what I mean? It just feels okay, is this sort of was that quite a vocal senior group? And now we're going to see a transition towards a more united one in terms of
the players Sonia has brought. Yeah,
executing what Sonia wants to do and what the club wants to do, just because, it's a little bit more harmonious. And again, I'm not accusing those players of mutiny or anything like that.
Sounds to me like you are.
But do you know what I mean? It's
no, totally. I think if I remember that Athletic piece correctly, I think it basically did say, one of the main complaints from the group of players who weren't very happy was that the intensity in training wasn't high enough. And, they are comparing that to what it used to be like under Emma Hayes. So, I think it's very fair to assume that there is clearly a bit of a disconnect there. Sonia's got her style, and I think it kind of, it stands to reason that players who've, we know all about Emma Hayes. She's got this real, I guess, cult of personality makes her sound bad, but, she is the type of manager who players will, they'll say, she could say something to me and I'd run through brick walls for her. I'd follow her to the ends of the earth, all this kind of stuff. And so I think to go from that and have this person who is, we've seen on that documentary, which was 2019?
Yeah.
Where, Emma Hayes is very, very blunt. She's, you can tell the players love her, and yet you're also seeing her say, if you're not good enough, I'll find someone else. So it's like a tough love, brutal environment. But if you can survive in it, you feel 10 foot tall, because you must be the best of the best to survive in that environment. So I think,
especially if she keeps picking you.
Well, exactly, yeah. And I think for certain players, and again, we saw in that documentary, certain players just didn't respond to that at all. They found it way too cutthroat, way too kind of harsh, and couldn't live with it. And that's certain personalities are always going to find that way. And presumably those players who didn't gel under Hayes would cite a kind of a manager like Bonpastor, who by the sounds of things might be a bit more kind of a bit less intense, a bit more maybe like methodical on the training ground, rather than trying to really get players up for it and make them into these kind of mentality monsters and that kind of thing. And it certainly feels like just looking down the player list now, obviously there is still plenty of Hayes DNA still in that team, but I think, like you say, Millie Bright is a huge one, Sam Kerr is a huge one, obviously Erin Cuthbert's still there, and you've got to feel like she's going to be a major leader in that team from here. But then you are looking down the list now, and there's fewer and fewer players that if they did play under Hayes, they're kind of like Hannah Hampton, who played under her for
Aggie Beaver-Jones.
Yeah, really only kind of 6 months in her final season.
Like Nuskin as well, I suppose.
Yeah, although, Bonpastor doesn't appear to rate her very much either. But, and then you've obviously got LJ, but, I think LJ's kind of a special case in that she's clearly...
I didn't so much mean that, like, obviously it's now, like, it's only players that Bonpastor have
No, but we are we're getting there. Like, whereas before...
Yeah.
When obviously Bonpastor took over, there were some signings in there, but it was still, and I think
it's not so much they've played under Hayes. It's the seniority, I guess.
Yes, they didn't just play under Hayes, but they were Hayes's players.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of segues us nicely then into kind of their outgoings and incomings so far, and then I think you wanted to talk a little bit about their transfer policy, but like. Maybe we could just recap quickly on the players that have left just for completeness. So I've got Wrighton, Kerr, Wrighton, Cannerid, Charles, Bright, Macario, and then Jean-Francois, who I forgot had gone to Villa. I think that's everyone. Right, and then in terms of incomings, I've got Katie McCabe, Julia Dragoni, Melvin Mallard, Matt Sakobo, and Nelly Lass. And then I think they've got a couple of academy players that have been given pro contracts as well.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've covered, like, in terms of the players that have gone, it feels like, I don't feel like there's, you've really fucked up there, other than maybe Sam Kerr.
Yeah, and I think we can get into Kerr in a minute. I think we mainly talked about it off mic, but I have a conspiracy theory there around Kerr.
Okay, well, steady on. Get into that in a minute, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, I'll hand over to you to talk about their business so far.
Yeah, fundamentally, obviously, so Matsukobo, very, very highly rated. I think we covered her on a previous episode.
Yep.
Yeah, was the NWSL midfielder of the year. Yeah, generally looks very, very exciting. And yeah, I think the only kind of question mark there is she actually going to play, or is she just going to be farmed out on loan straight away?
Well, she hasn't gone on pre-season.
Yeah.
But I've seen like that could be like just a load thing, because obviously she's been playing in the NWSL. So maybe let's not read too much into that.
Two others, Nelly Laz, who we talked about quite a lot of detail on the Leicester podcast, but that was mainly through the lens of us being just dismayed about how little we used her last season, and now Chelsea have signed her, and it's kind of like, well... To summarise, I think very, very, very good prospect for the future. Yeah.
Whether they'll keep her around to develop her and trust her with the odd...
Yeah.
The odd couple of minutes here and there. I don't know whether they'll send her out on loan.
Yeah.
The way, as we spoke about on our Leicester podcast, we said... the way that they've been sort of speaking about her and featuring a lot on social media. She's gone straight on pre-season tour. They've also got like Chloe Sarwi in the senior squad as well. They keep her around. Lexi Potter.
Yeah.
Like, hasn't Lois Shooter as well gone on the pre-season tour? And
I believe so. Yeah.
So it's like I can see a scenario in which she sticks around.
Yeah.
And she's not gonna. I don't think she's gonna be starting.
No.
Week in, week out, but I can see a situation in which she is around and not out on loan.
I think with Laz, so again, for listeners who skipped rudely our Leicester episode, the reason we were frequently told last season that she wasn't playing in a team that was just getting battered every single week was, we didn't want to throw our young players into difficult situations. And, whether you think that's a load of rubbish or not, there is something to be said of, not just destroying young players' confidence like that. I do think Laz, just to give a bit of background, she is a very, very kind of athletic, attacking fullback. And I think actually, if I'm Chelsea looking at her and thinking, how do I want her to get minutes and develop? Am I going to send her out to a Crystal Palace where, let's be honest, she's going to be doing an awful lot of defending? Or, you know what, give her 20 minutes, half an hour behind Carpenter every game. And that will really, they're going to be 2-0 up, 3-0 up in a lot of those scenarios. She's going to have a lot of license to get forward to show what she can do. So it's almost like the better the team is, the more she might actually get decent chances to develop. Whereas if it's a team in a sort of backs to the wall, desperately clinging on situation, are they going to favour experience over her?
Yeah. Sorry, it was Lola Brown that's got not Lola Shearer got mixed up.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No,
continue.
That's all good. And then, there's two more signings. We'll get on to Mallard in a second.
Yeah.
Firstly, Katie McCabe, fundamentally, first and foremost, an extremely funny signing to have made.
the funniest signing, I think, of the window.
Yeah, I think, if nothing else, the comedy value that's come along with that signing is quite, it's worth it from my perspective.
It's going to be the gift that keeps on giving as well when they play each other.
Oh,
Chelsea and Arsenal.
Yeah, again, if you've missed it, Katie McCabe, obviously, Arsenal legend.
Yeah, I will say at this point, just as a disclaimer, that it's funny as a complete neutral. I understand why Arsenal fans would be
1,000%
insanely rattled by it. And
not only has she gone to your historic and local biggest rival, certainly in the women's game, she's gone there and kind of renounced her gunnership straight away and said, "Oh, I was always a Chelsea fan, and I grew up playing." And even if it's true, it's like, wow, okay,
it's a bit yikes, isn't it?
I think I really, really rate Katie McCabe. I think it was probably, I know Arsenal kind of did a bit of a panic and were like, she's going, oh wait, no, let's offer a contract, kind of, and I think that almost speaks to the quality she has and the, how good a player she is. I do think probably long term for Arsenal and McCabe, it was probably time to just both move on.
And they've done all right, haven't they? Out of the deal.
Well, yeah,
on a better year.
They've certainly done okay, but I think she's it feels a little bit, well, actually, a lot like when Chelsea signed Lucy Bronze, but even more so because Chelsea fans were, well, maybe a vocal minority of Chelsea fans when they brought in Bronze were sort of saying, this is not the kind of business we should be doing. We should be getting younger players. She's old, she's past it. I think to do that with a player who has massive history with your greatest rivals as well is kind of doubling down on that policy. But I
think what you get with McCabe is what we've spoken about. She kind of fixes two issues, which is like creating chances and defensive solidity.
Yeah,
she's
and just filling some holes in the dressing room as well. No Bright, no Kerr. She is going to be, if she walked in and got made vice captain straight off the bat, again, every Chelsea and Arsenal fans full on meltdown. So Sonia, if you are listening, can you do that? That would be quite fun. But
she's one of the best fullbacks in the world. So
still is
solid signing.
Absolutely, you can't, and I think compared to what they got out of Niamh Charles last year, I'd be willing to take that bet that I think they'll probably get more production out of McCabe. I know obviously last year they had a sort of rotating cast of Berman and Charles and a bit of Baltimore and it was a bit all over the shop at left back at times, and they obviously were back three, back four. So it's we'll see what happens. But and obviously as well, McCabe can fill in at centre back as we saw last season.
Yes.
So all round good signing, I think. Which brings us on to Melvine Mallard, who so this is when I mentioned my Kerr conspiracy theory. Basically, we obviously learned of Sam Kerr's kind of impending departure pretty early on in the window. It kind of felt like
I think there were rumours rumbling before the end of the season, wasn't there? That she wasn't going to stick around.
Yeah. And then obviously that did come to pass. It took a little time for that to get confirmed. But for those that have missed it, obviously Mallard has come in from Man United. I think in the sense of a bit like McCabe, making not only adding something to the squad, but also making a direct opponent weaker is not necessarily the worst thing to have done in the world. But
fair bit of money as well.
Fair bit of money. Was it 800 odd thousand?
Plus add-ons.
Yeah,
I think,
plus add-ons and stuff.
So
like
it was
that.
going. I'm sure, like plus the add-ons, it was going over $1 million.
Yes.
I
So
think.
where we'll get onto Mallard's kind of qualities as a player and what we think she can do in a second, but I want to throw it out there because basically, like I say, Kerr, it was announced she was leaving when they signed Mallard, which only went through a couple of weeks ago. There was some weird kind of quotes, some unnamed source quotes in some of the reporting saying that Chelsea were basically saying, yeah, she was our woman all summer long. We've been desperate for her. We finally landed her, all this kind of stuff. And some of that is kind of standard transfer speak, but it did, for me and my football bullshit radar, it kind of crossed the threshold of, the unnamed club official doth protest too much, because what we've had this summer, and again, sorry if we're covering old ground, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been following along with these various transfer sagas, is Chelsea being very heavily linked with Romy Lukter, with Felicia Schroeder, and most prominently with Bunny Shaw, who was at one stage reported to be fully out of Manchester City,
expected to sign
fully
for Chelsea.
gone. All the reports about how much Chelsea were going to pay her, it was as close to a done deal as you will get. That the BBC and the Guardian, the outlets that won't report something unless they are getting very, very, very strong sources behind it, were saying this is like 95% done. And obviously, what happens in the end is Bunny Shaw re-signs with Manchester City. So, given all of that, and the fact that it took them until a couple of weeks ago to sign Mallard, and then they've come out and said, "Oh yeah, no, it was always Mallard." Are we calling bullshit on Chelsea on this? Did they? And I think as well the fact that Kerr, it took a little bit. It wasn't just like, here's the last game of the season. Everyone say goodbye to Sam Kerr because she's off. It was and then she took a while to get announced. And yeah.
Do you remember if it was reported that they offered her a new contract, or did they agree to sort of?
I don't think they did, but it felt like
that detail conveniently missing.
There was enough kind of time. I feel like with Kerr, it felt like it kind of should have been a situation where they should have been like, you know what, it's 3 games left of the season. We can announce that Sam Kerr's leaving Chelsea.
It's like a Beth Mead.
Yes.
It would have been a McCabe and Mead situation, but they fumbled the McCabe situation a little bit. Arsenal, this is. Like, they did that with Beth Mead. Like, it sounded like both the club and the player had said mutually, we agree to part ways. It's the right time. I want to go and do something else. You want to go in a different direction. And someone like Sam Kerr, that feels like, something you should do. So I do agree. The timing is.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think that Mallard truly was the one they were after the whole summer, or do you think they've basically rattled through a few options, have been turned down in a few different directions, and certainly by Bunny Shaw, I think we have to say, and Mallard is. It sounds kind of like the 4th player they've kind of landed.
Yeah,
on.
It certainly seems that way, doesn't it? And I mean, it's sort of one of those things where it's feasible that she wouldn't be, because she played for Bonpastor.
Yeah, at Lyon. Yeah,
at Lyon. I think actually when the sort of it moved through very quickly, didn't it? From it felt like from rumour to that being announced.
Yeah,
relative to other deals that we've seen go through this summer, which again makes it very suspicious. But at the time, it kind of, and when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. She's the kind of player that I think they need. That's why. If she wasn't on their list, why not? Basically,
yeah.
But I think, there's too many things that have happened that before we've got to Mallard.
Yes.
That to make me think, no, they were in for Mallard from the get go, because I know Chelsea in terms of they're probably one of the most well-resourced women's teams, unless we're counting London City Lionesses, but are they really going to make Bunny Shaw one of the highest paid players in the world and then drop that amount of money on Melvin Mallard in the same window? Yeah,
and also, there might have been a very long and torturous negotiation about the fee, but it kind of feels like if you're willing to pay that money for Mallard, we know the exact vibes coming out of Manchester United at the moment, hence Mark Skinner's departure. I feel like if you'd gone...
They would have snapped their hand off.
Exactly. If you'd gone to Manchester United on the first day of the transfer window and said, do you want 800 grand plus for Melvin Mallard? They would have said, yes, here you go. Do you want us to drive? Again, she's a good player, but we will drive her down the M6 for you.
Provided you pay for the petrol. Because,
Jim Ratcliffe in his Rolls Royce or whatever.
We will be submitting an expense claim.
Yeah. But
we will drive her. Yeah, no, I just think... I mean, there's like an element of like, did Bunny Shaw...
Did she play them?
Did
her agent play
her agent?
Chelsea?
Like Bunny Shaw and her team used that Chelsea situation to leverage Man City into a better deal. We compared it the other day to Vinicius Junior.
Yes,
he just re-signed a 6-year deal with Real Madrid. Was heavily linked with Arsenal, and it was like, was he ever intending to go to Arsenal, or was he just using Arsenal?
Yeah, was that a nice convenient bit
to
of
hang the sword of Damocles over Real Madrid's
absolutely.
head and get them to offer him, a better contract? That's fine. That's football. It's not, I'm not accusing the players of being Machiavellian there and evil. I'm just saying that's the situation. That's how it works. That's how the market works. But like I say, the reporting was so clear. Like, this is happening. She's expected to leave. She will be joining Chelsea.
Yes.
So who was briefing that?
Yes.
Who was briefing that? Which side of the fence was briefing that?
Yeah.
Because if you're Bunny Shaw and you're saying, I still, like, if you're behind closed doors saying to City, I don't know why in my head I'm imagining Bunny Shaw literally sitting there. He was going to be her agent, wasn't he? Like, it's literally saying there, like, she really wants to stay here.
Yeah.
But she will be forced to go to Chelsea unless you sign this.
Bunny Shaw hopping off the Avanti West Coast down to London at Milton Keynes to go back up to Manchester.
Unless you give her XYZ, she will be have to go to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And then going to Chelsea and being like, I really want to join, like,
what's the best you can give me?
Yeah.
Take that back to City match.
I forgot where I was going with it.
Anyway, well...
No. Yeah. Do you want to then... Does your agent then put out there, like...
Yeah.
No, she's going to Chelsea. She's going to leave City.
Yeah, to crank the pressure up a little bit.
Like, no, but would you send a message that strong? Would that, if you're City there, would you just not be like, well, fuck you then? Like...
Maybe, yeah.
We'll go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like that. You know what I mean? Like, you can see a situation in which, like, Chelsea are like, no. We've spoken to her. She's 100% leaving.
Yeah.
She's going to join us in the next few days. Like, trust me. And then it's just blown up in their faces.
Well, with all that...
look, as much as Mallard is a good signing, in the end, I think we are both looking sideways at that a little bit in terms of them saying that she was our target, she was our prospect from the beginning. I think...
The thing I was driving at with all of that wasn't just like a haha, our Chelsea liars sort of situation. But with all that in mind, like you've just said Mallard's a good signing. I'm not saying she isn't a good signing, but so she scored... I know she scored a few quite important goals in the Champions League for Man United. I'm not taking that away from her. I think she scored 4 in 14 Champions League games, 5 assists, very good numbers. I think, some of the earlier rounds helped her out there a little bit on the numbers, but whatever. WSL, she scored 6 goals in 21 appearances, and 4 of those came in the first 2 games of the season. So she played 19 WSL games and scored 2 goals. Coming into this season.
Okay, when you put it like that,
I don't think you're ever going to get Sam Kerr levels of output from her.
When you put it like that, 800 and whatever it was does sound like a lot of money.
I to be honest, I'm not that worried about the money because we know that's the way, the fees are all the time. We're breaking the world transfer record every 5 minutes. But
I have other feelings about how she was used in that Man United team as well.
Yeah.
I think she's got quality. Like, I think we might talk about this, but she was played out wide a lot. And I don't know if that was out of necessity because of injuries or whether he just preferred her there. And she can play there, but I much prefer her as a number 9.
Yeah, and that for me is kind of the crux. I'll be really interested to see where Bonpastor does play her. Because it feels like Chelsea are quite still relatively stacked in the wide positions, particularly if you're playing LJ out there.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you about this because I don't think they are stacked in the wide positions.
I suppose they've lost Cannerid and Wright.
They've got Thompson and they've got James that are out and out, who you might say are out and out wingers. And then they've got Aggie Beaver-Jones and Myra Ramirez, who are
Yeah.
who are more central.
I said stats because I thought about Thompson and James. And
Yeah,
I was
well,
like, oh,
I mean, two players that, you know,
yeah.
are very, very, very good, but
yeah,
I wouldn't say they're
No.
stacked in terms of like options there.
when you put it like that, I mean,
Yeah, like I think Dragoni's more of
she's like a 10, really.
a second mid, like, and that's what I was going to ask you about generally. Is like, yes, we know Mallard can be versatile and play out wide, but like, are they missing that width? But also, like, she didn't tend to play with like a very much last season with a lone striker or a front three. There was more of like a front two at times.
Yeah, she liked Thompson in that kind of front two.
Oh, they've got
she?
Baltimore as well. I forgot she
They
was
do
a
have
winger.
Yeah.
But
and they have Nelly Laz, who has played there for Leicester.
yes, yes. But I forgot because obviously Baltimore's played as a left back and all sorts, so I forgot.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've sort of lost a couple of options in that position, and it's like they've got a lot of central. A lot of their threat is now centralised.
Yeah.
Which might not be a bad thing, and they might end up playing Mallard out wide. But I certainly, do you agree that she's better in the 9?
Oh, that's a question. I honestly really don't know. I
prefer
feel
her
like
as a 9.
I've seen good stuff from her in the 9, but then, you know, part of me does feel like there must have been a sort of reason why. I know what you mean about her not being played in the 9 at Man United, but I feel like, you know, there must be a reason for that. If she was so much better in the 9 than she is on out wide, I would have assumed that United would have played her there. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, you know, it wouldn't be the first time a player's been played in a position and then changed club and been given an entirely new lease of life playing in a different position by a coach who sees something different from them. But yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out. I just think generally the number 9 position for Chelsea, I think, you know, given it sounds like they were in for Bunny Shaw, given they were in for Lukter, given they were in for Schroeder, you know, is Mallard going to match? You know, she's not going to give you Bunny Shaw level numbers from. I'm just looking at
her numbers throughout her career. Really, she's never been particularly prolific.
No, but I mean, I think this is it for me. Like Mallard, she's never been that prolific. You know, Ramirez looked great when she first came in. We've talked about this before. I think the first season under Bonpastor, I think a lot of defences sort of figured her out, and you know, she scored 4 goals in 17 WSL games. Again, not great. And then last season was basically injured. I think she made 1 appearance in the WSL all season. Was basically injured for the entire thing. So I've got to be honest. I'm not looking at Myra Ramirez and thinking, oh, they've got his 15 goals coming back into the team. And then Beaver Jones, I think, is a really interesting one because I feel like she's had some real hot streaks, but last season she struggled. I think, you know, it seems like Bonpastor prefers her out wide, which maybe Beaver Jones is my Mallard because I've never understood the logic of that. I think she's a much better player in the 9 or in a front 2.
I agree with that. I've said that because she sometimes comes on out wide for England, I think. Which
I mean, again, I you know.
And then also, I think, I can't remember like what game it was, but like Bonpastor came out afterwards and said, I think I prefer her as a 10. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It feels like she's still kind of, people are still trying to figure her out.
I think what's interesting there is like you're speaking about those players, and you've got 3 players there who can all play in the 9. They've all got very different strengths and attributes. So does this not, playing devil's advocate here, I suppose it's not devil's advocate, but I'm just sort of directly arguing with you.
Sonia's advocate.
Does that not add up to like a really good position to be in, to have those players to call on? Like if you need a different option.
Yeah.
They all offer something different.
Yeah. I think that's a very fair reading of it. And I'm obviously coming at it from quite a negative perspective. For me, I think thinking about Chelsea, and I'm banging on about Sam Kerr here and all the goals she scored, and obviously before her they had Beth England, and you know they not been short of prolific goal scorers. Obviously Fran Kirby scored a lot of goals for them as well. And I guess if I'm a Chelsea fan, I'm saying, well, that's all well and good, but we never won the Champions League, and that remains our core target. So maybe they've looked at what Arsenal did to Barcelona and thought, you know what, we need a multi-tool squad here that can solve problems. Maybe my pessimistic glass half full view on it would be I don't think any combination of Beaver Jones, Thompson, actually maybe Thompson, no, but Thompson, Ramirez and Mallard, I don't think any configuration of them in the front line replaces just stick Sam Kerr up top with Thompson and Baltimore, and she'll score a goal every other game kind of thing.
Okay. So I mean, I think another thing that you were sort of saying to me off mic as well is their recruitment like smart in terms of blending youth with experience, or is it a bit scattergun?
Yeah, I think that's again, unfortunately for us and our listeners, I think it's one of those that could go either way. And I think by November, we'll probably either be saying, oh well, that's worked out brilliantly, hasn't it? Because they've got this nice blend. They've replaced the experience that left the team with McCabe, but now but they've got this youth, they've got this exuberance. The shackles have come off a little bit, and it's all good. Or we might be looking at a sort of team that feels a lot more kind of cobbled together and thinking, well, hang on, you've got like Mallard, who's kind of, you've signed her as like she is in her peak right now, her prime right now. You've got Laz, who may be Chelsea caliber in a couple of years under the right kind of tutelage, and then you've got McCabe, who in a couple of years, let's be honest, probably won't be at the top level anymore. So what's the plan? If and we talked about this a lot with Arsenal, haven't we, where we sort of said they'd sign one player as a sort of let's win now player, and then be like, yeah, but
we need to have a plan for the future.
Yeah, let's also blood in, and it's like you kind of need to do one or the other at some point. You need to either trust your youth, you need to trust whoever your Kyrie Cooney crosses or whatever, and go with them and trust them and just accept that there might be a bedding in period, or you need to be like, I don't care about any of these young players, I want to win right now, let's sign X, Y and Z. So
I think just to round that off, because I want to move us on a bit because we've gone on a bit there, like I think as usual for Chelsea, I think on paper very good signings, very good identification, scouting, great that they've brought those players in. It's like, okay, well now, how are you using them?
Yes.
How do they fit in? What's the system? Where's Mallard playing? Is it Katie McCabe starting every week? Is Matsukobo staying? Is she going to be your 10?
Yeah. Like, what are you going to do with Hamano, who was fantastic?
What are you going to do with Hamano? What are you going to do with what are you going to do with Dragoni? Like, etc., etc., etc.
Vika Captain, you now have I'm 15
intrigued.
number 10s.
It'll be interesting to see, like, when they play. I think they're playing A-League All-Stars in a couple of days.
Yes.
Because Mallard didn't play against Auckland.
Yes.
So I think Beaver Jones started and then Ramirez came on.
Yeah, Beaver Jones definitely started because she scored a hat-trick in 10 minutes.
So I will be interested to see where she plays Mallard.
Yes.
But I think it's all going to be very fluid in that front line, because I think there's for me there's not a lot of players that you can that they've got that you can shoehorn into one particular attacking position.
Yeah,
because I think Thompson can play more centrally.
She can play in that front too. Or
Baltimore's probably a bit more of a quote unquote traditional winger.
Yeah, but she can play anywhere down that left hand side.
Lauren James has and does play as a winger, but as we know, is more
really a winger. Yeah,
just floats around and does as she pleases, quite rightly. So it's like, I do think it's just going to be more fluid, and don't know whether will that be a good thing like it was for City?
Yes,
make them less predictable,
or will it just end up looking like a bit of a mess?
Or will it end up looking like a bit of a mess? Time will tell.
Yeah,
but I think all good signings. I think when we sat down a couple of weeks ago and spoke about the transfer window, I said Chelsea need to do a lot more, and they have, in terms of like the existing players that you've got back coming back from injuries like Ramirez, etc. Are you keeping Hamano and players like that around? Nuskin, who wasn't getting much game time. There's a lot of questions for me about how all this fits together with the new signings that I'm interested to see.
Yeah.
And agreed. I just don't really know at the moment, because like I say, I couldn't pick a starting 11 out of that squad at the moment. Do you know what I mean? That I would say like, totally. I think that would be Chelsea's best starting 11. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely.
I'm going to have to think more about that.
Like I said, just the number of number of number 10s they have is kind of ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
you can
or players that you wouldn't like. You can play in the 10.
Yes, yeah,
or wouldn't necessarily think he's a 10.
But like Dragoni, LJ. Obviously, Sonia doesn't normally play her there, but she can play there. Beaver Jones, apparently.
Yeah, Hamano, captain,
Nuskin.
Yeah.
I think Nuskin's going to be backup keeper this year. I think it's the one position she's not played for Chelsea, and I think the time has come before she gets shuffled out to the Frauen Bundesliga in January. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if she's gone by the end of the window, because
I've just remembered something as well, which I've meant to mention, but we've got so far into the episode and then I forgot to. Obviously, we should also acknowledge that Hannah Hampton signed a new contract, which is obviously really important for them.
Yeah.
And then Aggie Beaver-Jones actually signed a new contract as well.
Yes.
But that, I think she's spoken publicly about how she sat down with Bon Pastor and said, like, had a really honest conversation with her and said, look, I need some assurances that it's going to be better next season. Otherwise, I'm going to go looking for another.
Yeah, otherwise I'm going to go to Leicester. That's unfortunate.
I'm going to go looking for another opportunity.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting for her to come out and say that quite fairly. Like, look, I can go anywhere.
Yeah.
What you got for me?
Yeah.
Are we going to be better next season? Are you going to play me more, basically? But anyway. I think those are the two that have kind of signed a contract extension.
Other than the sort of amateurs turning pro.
Yeah, so those are two real key retentions, I think. So we should mention those as well. But I think to round off, then I think we want to talk quickly about we are going to do a WSL predictions episode, so we'll probably talk about Chelsea a bit more, like in terms of where they'll finish and whatever then. Because I don't think I want to talk about now where they're going to finish in the league, because I think
there's still a lot to shake out. I think
so much of what Arsenal do, City do, Man United have lost the plot a little bit, but maybe we can put LCL into that conversation. We could put Spurs into that conversation. Brighton. I think there's just so many more elements now that I can't say they're going to finish here.
Yeah.
I think. But what we wanted to talk about was, what can they realistically expect, roughly, if we're not putting a flag in the sand? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I think you specifically wanted to talk about what would be the sort of, what would need to happen for there to be that sort of Sonia Bon Pastor, is she safe conversation to like rise up again. I think for me, just to kick off, I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? Like whether now they're going to be like, okay, well, now we need to focus on the Champions League again, or now whether it's like, no, we need to get back to winning the league. What's going to be the focus? Because it's almost like you've almost got to look at it as like, well, okay, we kind of need to do both, really.
Yeah,
because we've been chasing the Champions League.
Yeah, the Champions League is so big for them, but now they've lost the league title. It's almost like the luster of that is back, because they want to reclaim the throne.
Yeah, and like I say, with this generation of new players coming in, they'll want to win the league with Chelsea.
Yeah.
I mean, fair few of them have, but you know what I mean? There's new crop of players and stuff coming through. Ones that joined last season maybe as well. They'll be like, I want to win the league with Chelsea.
Any silverware, yeah.
But the fundamental difference as well with them this season is like not winning the league, is they've got to qualify for the Champions League. They've got to play a two-legged qualifier game.
Yeah, which we don't know who that will be against next. I mean,
I think if they don't, early doors. It's a big if, really. But I think if they didn't qualify at all, it happened to Arsenal and Man United a few seasons ago. I think if they didn't qualify at all, I think straight away I'd be like,
the knives would be out for Bon Pastor.
I'd be waiting for the announcement. I think
communication official.
Yeah,
comunicado.
But I see so many times we've spoken about these managers in the women's game, and like particularly in the top jobs like Chelsea, it's like, well, if you're going to get rid of her, who are you bringing in?
Mark Skinner.
And no, I've got him earmarked for Leicester.
Amandine for Chelsea.
She did speak about wanting to be Chelsea manager one day. She started in their youth team, didn't she? But that's the first hurdle that they've got to get over. They've got to qualify for the Champions League.
Yeah.
I think if they had a season next season where they didn't win the league but maybe won the FA Cup, maybe if they could win the Champions League, I think if they win the Champions League, there'd be no question.
Yeah. All bets are off if they do that. I mean, my baseline is, I think if they have a season, if they were to just carbon copy last season again this season, I think that would be the end of Bon Pastor.
You reckon?
Yeah,
I mean, they can't win the League Cup or the Players' Cup.
Well, no, that famously.
So maybe if
they can't even eat fresh anymore because the subway has been taken out of their hands.
If we replace that with the FA Cup, do you think she's still gone.
That might just about swing it, but
Yeah.
I think if they ended the season trophyless, even if it was like a sort of Champions League final and sort of late pipping to the league title by Arsenal or City or Everton or whoever, I can see a situation where they'd turn around and say, a League Cup in 2 years is not good enough for Chelsea.
No, I mean, and I was going to say, like, if they don't do that, I think if I was a Chelsea fan at this point, I'd be asking why not.
Yeah,
like you can't.
No, totally.
It's not a Manchester United situation where you can. I'm going to say the word moan, but I think he's got a point. Moan about being under-resourced, not having the investment. They have invested. They've given her the tools.
Bought her an entirely new team in the space of 2 years.
Yeah,
or 3
they
years
need
now.
to be. They need to be pushing for those.
Yep.
For those trophies, and yeah, I think I agree with you. Actually, I think it's a bold call, but like.
I mean, I don't know how.
I think they do need to be bold if they're going to live up to their own legacy, really.
Yeah, and I think
Champions
League quarter-final again.
I don't see, let's say, unless her going before the end of the season feels unrealistic.
I think if they, as long as,
because I don't think they're going to get a start bad enough that they're going to bullet her. Like, I just don't see that happening. I think they will qualify for the Champions League.
I think if it looked like they weren't going to get out of the group stage in the Champions League, because I think that, if I think I'm right in saying, that will extend over the Christmas break.
But I don't know, like, not everyone's Barcelona. Like, it's hard to both win the league and win the Champions League in the women's game.
It is.
I think it's unfair to expect, like, that's what I mean. It's like, what is their priority this season? Do they need to be winning the league again, or do they need to be winning the Champions League?
Yeah.
Like, you want a good run in the Champions League, but like I say, it's not everyone's Barcelona, where Liga F is, let's be honest, basically handed to them at the start of every season.
Yeah,
like it's hard. It's going to be hard to win both of those things.
Yeah,
and they might be sitting there at the back room in Chelsea and saying, like, we don't see why you can't win both of those things.
Yeah.
We don't see why you can't do the treble.
Yeah, I think what I would say as well is I think the fixture calendar has been relatively kind to Chelsea. I think, they, in terms of obviously we don't know anything about the Champions League. They could be handed a real kind of nightmare run there. But they do, so they play Man United away on the second day of the season. But then they have Arsenal at home, Spurs at home, City at home, basically a lot of the LCL at home. Basically the way it's fallen is I think they have a lot of home games against the teams that they're probably going to be up against this season. So
in the first half of
what I was kind of driving at there was, is there a situation where if it looks like they're struggling in the Champions League and they've managed to they've lost 3 fixtures in the league and a City or an Arsenal or both are just kind of doing the classic WSL winner mode where you might lose 1 or 2 games in the season, but that's it. They might already be kind of quote unquote out the running by Christmas, and maybe they'll look at it and think, that's...
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I again, it's quite extreme. Lots of stuff can change. Lots of circumstances can come up. But
I just think they're very much like in the business, I suppose, of like, they do have a win now mentality, but I just don't see them being that sort of club where they're going to like... I mean, I know they do on the men's side. They've sacked how many managers last season, but like, do you know what I mean? I just feel like even if it's going particularly badly,
are they
like are they going to pull the trigger and just be like, well, because like who are you going to bring in?
Yeah,
to turn it around.
We have very little
like
data.
Having a manager
Hayes for so long,
having a manager and sacking a manager because you're in trouble of being relegated and bringing someone to turn that around is very different to.
Some clubs don't even bother doing that.
Some clubs don't even bother doing that. Like, it was very different to sacking a manager because they're not mid-season.
Yes.
Because they're not challenging for Champions League or whatever.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
you might look at,
how much is a new manager going to be able to turn that around?
Yeah, it feels like if...
Or do you just say, okay, right, this season's a write-off. We're not going to get relegated.
If the season's bad enough to warrant sacking her, it's probably going to be too bad for anyone to salvage anyway. That's what I mean. So it's like, let's just take our time.
That's what I mean when I say I find it difficult to see a situation in which she goes mid-season.
She's gone by October, that's my prediction.
But if they don't qualify for the Champions League, then I'm sort of like, But even then, it's like
But
it's
just
a
to clarify, you mean if they lose in this double-headed qualifying round,
and they don't make the Champions League, do they say like, okay, no?
Yeah, this is clearly not going to work out,
Well,
and then they still have the full league season ahead of them. We just don't know.
I don't know. It's hard to say, isn't it?
It is.
We've beat around the bush too much there.
Food for thought.
It's very much food for thought. I think
I'll stick my neck on the line and think this time next year I think Bonpastor won't be Chelsea manager.
You don't think so?
I just think there's City and Arsenal have a lot of headwind. I think, unfortunately for her as well, I think tactically, I've never really been that enamoured with her, and I just think the style of football she's been playing. I mean, you said it earlier. I just think it's quite predictable, and there is a certain level you can get to by just being predictable, but having really good players. They obviously still have those, but I'm not looking at them. I'm looking at what City were able to do last season with, as you said, like how kind of they adapted and became more flexible, the fact that they've retained Bunny Shaw. I'm looking at Arsenal, who have obviously made some big signings, refreshed the squad massively. I think everyone in that dressing room will be absolutely up for it, whether they've just come in or they're there, but they're looking around thinking, oh, well, there's a lot going on here.
And I think Jeglerts and Slagers are both superior tacticians.
Well, I was just going to say, Jeglerts, obviously, he really evolved that City identity last season. And then Slagers, we know, is a brilliant kind of single game, figure this out manager. And if I'm being honest, I don't think Bonpastor is at either of their levels. So, yeah, that's my gut feeling.
Why do you hate Sonia Bonpastor? What's she done to you?
I blame her for Amandine leaving Leicester. No, I would. I mean, you said before we went on mic that you were feeling quite optimistic about Chelsea, which we might, a peek behind the curtain, but that's not something you say very often. But I don't know. I just don't have great feelings about them. I feel like they are.
The more that we've talked about it, we've sat and talked about it, I feel more foggy about it. Like, yes. I feel like it's all a bit shrouded in mystery at the moment.
So there you go. We've managed to confuse ourselves more than before.
It's like a bit like, I know how City are going to set up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know obviously for sure, but I could hazard a guess, or I could say like, this is what I'd do with this, XY player. This is what I'd start if in my, I can do that with Arsenal. I can't do that with LCL, but I don't think fucking anyone can.
No.
like Penny for Ed Meister's thoughts. He's like, what the fuck? He's looking at that team shit, like that squad list. He's thinking, what the fuck do I do with that?
Ed Meister must walk in to LCL every day, and like he's got players coming up to me like, hi, Gaffer, how you doing? And he's like, yeah, hi, nice to see it. And just like, who the fuck was that?
Was that Mary Earps?
Nikita? When did she come in? Lassie, what?
Yeah, I can probably, other than LCL, I can probably look at every other team in that league and think, I'm gonna have a good stab at how they're gonna set up next season.
Yeah,
formation, players, tactics ish.
Yeah,
Chelsea, I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, I can tell you the tactics right now because I just don't think Bonpastor is gonna evolve. But like, I agree with the philosophy, are they going to be going at the jugular? Are they going to be trying to dominate the ball? Are they going to be, it's Lexi Potter and Nelly Laz and Chloe Sarwi? Or is it going to be
Lucy Bronze, Katie McCabe?
Yeah, exactly. I just don't know.
Yeah.
So there you go. We've confused ourselves more.
I think, in my notes, the title of this episode is Chelsea ? And I feel like that's where we've arrived at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
I'm Ron.
Yeah, I was gonna...
I'm Sonia Bonpastor. You stay classy.
Cobham.
We've raised more questions than we've answered, but I don't feel like that's unusual for this podcast.
Say, the listeners, if you're upset by that, then you've clearly not been subscribed for very long.
That concludes this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Do come back next week. On the docket is going to be WAFCON. We're talking the WAFCON final. We're going to have a new winner for WAFCON because 10-time winners Nigeria have been knocked out. Nigeria aren't going to be in the Women's World Cup for like the first time ever.
Yep.
It's big. So we're going to talk about WAFCON. And I think we're also going to do, unless the WAFCON final is insane and that's all we've got time for, we are going to talk a little bit about the NWSL and an interesting thing going on, which is Utah Royals, who have been largely struggling since they came into the league being like incredible this season.
Yeah, for absolutely no reason.
We're going to try and find out why, because we can't
Let's be honest. We're going to start me like Utah are great, and then by the end be like they should be awful. I don't understand football.
Yeah, it's going to be this episode all over again. Like, anyway, that'll do. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.